Looks like we're all set.
Great. I'm still not seeing quite everybody, but I hope that they can hear me. Welcome to our first community forum related to a potential bond issue that we need community input for. I want to recognize that there's a number of staff members in the room, and I appreciate you being here. We need your input. I also want to recognize Nathan Kelly, a board member I saw has entered the meeting, and I appreciate Nathan being here for everybody tonight. I want to introduce some of the people that we've been working with to help us prepare for this event. They'll be helping us with our presentation tonight and speaking to you about some of the work that's already been done. So I want to introduce Sean Parshall. He is from Tower Pinkster Architecture, and also want to introduce Jacob Kohanek from Chrisman Construction. So you'll be hearing from both of them tonight. You'll be hearing from me. And the most important thing, I think, is that we hear from you. So I want to let you know that this is being recorded. For those that can't be here tonight, they can be sure and run that recording back at a later time. We'll have it posted on our social media as well as our website. So I think we can get started with sharing our screen and get started with kind of talking to you about why now, why we're here tonight for Allegan Public Schools and thinking about our future, which is very exciting. So the why now is an important and good question to ask. The reasoning is related to many things. So one thing I've realized in the past 6 months is that COVID-19 can force you to only look at the now and to live in this exact moment. And it would be easy to only respond and handle things that come up each day. I think we need to fight that inclination right now a little bit and continue to do our jobs to bring issues to the community that would serve the children of Allegan Public for the foreseeable future. The bottom line is that we can't shirk our responsibilities to the community, even in a pandemic. We have arrived at a time when our significant instructional and facilities needs intersect with our ability to raise the funds to meet those needs, all without raising taxes a single cent. Avoiding that timing because we have a couple other things going on, in our opinion, would be fiscally and ethically irresponsible. Our kids and families deserve the best, and we are never going to quit in our efforts to provide that to them. Previous bond issues that have been broadly supported by our community have not been able to meet all of our needs in the district, as we will discuss today, and we think it's time to address those needs. Also, many of our closest neighbors have recently passed bond issues to improve their facilities, and our kids, families, and staff deserve safe, secure, state-of-the-art 21st century learning spaces as well. So the question we asked ourselves before coming to you today is, if we can, together with you, craft and accomplish a bond proposal to meet our needs without raising taxes, then it is our responsibility to come build that proposal together with you. We have the opportunity to raise between $66 and $79 million for our kids without raising taxes for our community. This can be about more than fixing things up. This can be transformational in nature, and that is beyond exciting. So we're going to need to hear from you about not only facilities, what works for you and does not work for you in our district. And as you're living and breathing a day-to-day life in our community, we want to hear you and meet those needs. And so you'll be hearing a lot about what we've done thus far and hearing about each building and the facilities that we have. So thank you again for being here. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Sean and Jacob again to talk a little bit about what we've done thus far with a facilities assessment. We've done some visioning with our leadership group that I'll talk about. We've talked about things with our elementary focus group, which included some teachers and administrators and some other stakeholders already from our community. So Sean or Jacob, which of you would like to start?
Thanks, James. I'll go ahead and start. Again, I appreciate everybody being here with us today. It's a really exciting time. Again, I'm Jacob Kohanek. I'm with the Chrisman Company. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a recap of kind of how we've gotten to the point we're at today. And then we'll build forward from there with great input from everybody here that's joining us from the community. Today is a really important step. It's kind of the fifth step, I'll call it, because we have these on the slide here, that 1 through 4 that are outlined, showing that we had a facility assessment, Allegan Public Schools cabinet visioning session, elementary focus group, and a stakeholder meeting that all preceded this. Sean and I are going to go into some detail on the facility assessment here in a few minutes, so you'll learn a little bit more about that as we go through the detail. The cabinet visioning session, that was a group of administrators or principals, athletic director, transportation director, food service director, those types of folks, so that we could get a system-wide view of what the needs really are in the district. Following that, the elementary focus group, as James had said, that's one of the needs that we understand exist within the district, is that the previous bonds had touched high school and middle school maybe a little more than elementaries, and we understood that was a focus. So we spent some time with each of the principals and key members from the elementary schools. And then finally, we had a small kind of focus group that was community members who helped us, brainstorm some ideas to get an initial read on what's most important within your community. And on this slide, you see there's some items there with check marks by them. That is a broad kind of overview of the main categories of items that we've identified through this process. And today, this next step is arguably the very most important step, is kind of testing that with all of you, the parents and community members who are using these facilities, and your children are going to grow up in these facilities. So with that, I'm going to ask Kalina to move to the next slide, and I'll touch on the first few buildings that we did our assessment in, and then I'm going to hand it over to Sean for him to focus more on elementaries. Give you a little background on how the facility assessment works. Is that we bring a group of industry professionals together, design professionals and construction professionals. So that's Tower Pinkster and the Chrisman Company, who Sean and I are representing, that went through each and every one of the facilities within the district. We just took an unbiased approach at looking at what are real needs within those facilities based on our experience, and each of our industry professionals' eye for their specific trade. So that may have been related to architectural, may have been related to mechanical or electrical systems, and so on and so forth. So these are recommendations, and it's, let me take that back. It's very important to understand that this is not a finalized list of things that need to happen in each building. What it is a report of what we found, right? So we've summarized on each of these slides the key things that were identified in each building. And there's going to be a detailed report that'll be posted on the website that all of you will have access to. So some of you that have joined us today that were part of some of these visioning sessions, you may see things on there that you brought up to us, or see some things that are not on there, that you brought up to us, but perhaps fall underneath these, these headings. So, don't worry if you don't see a particular item that we talked about. It'll show up on our detailed list. And as we go through this process of getting input from the community, then we start to refine together what the overall scope looks like. So on the high school, which is the slide in front of all of us, there's 6 main categories that are listed here, and I put those really in 4 categories. Honestly, I'll say at the high school, what we found is safety and security was a big driving item and issue that we feel like needs to be addressed and get some attention. There are building infrastructure issues and finishes and such that we feel should be looked at and considered. 21st century learning is a common theme that you'll hear us talk about. And, that is, some of these buildings have some age to them. So it's adapting the building to the current teaching environment, the current learning environment that we need to adapt to. And then finally, energy savings items, things that we identified that could be improved in the facility, that may be electrical, mechanical, or otherwise, that will have a payback ultimately for the district and save the district money and improve efficiency. So if we move to the next slide, the middle school, you'll see a very common theme here between these two. These facilities are in great shape. I want to add that they're well maintained, but with like any facility that has some age on it, there's going to be some things that that need to be taken care of. So it's a very similar theme here at the middle school: safety and security, some building and infrastructure needs, 21st century learning improvements that we think could be made, and that's listed in the bullet there that says update teaching spaces, and finally energy savings again. And if we move to the administration building, there's less of an investment, I would say, needed here at the administration building, but there are still some of those similar issues. So it'd be a smaller investment, but there are the things listed here that need some attention. Exterior envelope, making sure you're safe, warm, and dry here. Exterior envelope, safety and security, that all goes in that theme of safe, warm, and dry. Communication, that district phone system, that that is a state mandate now, where the phone system needs to be upgraded throughout the district. And then energy savings once again. We also studied athletics. So on the next slide, you'll see that we've listed items that were either identified by our team as a need, like the track surface, for instance. That's reached the end of its life, and the track needs to be resurfaced, although the asphalt's in really good shape. But then things like the high school stadium there underneath that bullet, where it says replace grass with artificial turf, that was brought up within the community in some of our previous discussions. So that made our list and may or may not make the short list at the end of the day. Some communication needs there were also voiced from those previous meetings: scoreboards, PA system, improving practice field at the high school and middle school. And then last but certainly not least is the tennis courts. You see we have a photo there of the tennis courts, and there's 4 of them that are not being used right now, 8 of them that are being used, but they're in need of some help. Let's just put it that way. So the intent there would be replacement of all 12 of those tennis courts. And then the last slide that I'm going to speak to before handing off to Sean here is some miscellaneous items: transportation, technology, and furniture. We reviewed all of those aspects as well of your district, and those have been identified in our assessment, and you'll see in detail some of the things that are recommended within the transportation side of things, technology, and then furniture to align with again that 21st century learning environment. So again, thank you for joining us tonight, and I'm going to hand off to Sean now.
I think maybe a couple more things just to add on to what Jacob laid out, just as the overall report. When the detailed report is published and available to you all, just to give you a frame of reference, these recommendations that are created within this report are really based upon if we were building a building like new. So if we were building it with today's technology or today's construction techniques, what would the things be that we would really want to make sure are put in place? So keep that in mind in the future when this does become available. I would like to add on, just as Jacob mentioned, this certainly is not a reflection of the district's ability to use their operational funds to maintain buildings. Just the sheer amount of square footage that the district has to maintain is a challenge, and they're stretching their dollars, I think, as far as they can. So this certainly is not a reflection upon, when you see the report, it's not a reflection upon the district's desire and their diligence in trying to keep up with these large facilities. continuing themes that Jacob talked about, exterior envelope, all of the elementaries you're going to see very similar types of themes, roof repair. There are significant areas of roof that are being recommended for replacement at the elementary buildings. Safety and security, so that site traffic again. Jacob mentioned it at the middle school, but we also know, and James has even shared with us through other feedback that he gets, that's a concern. So we're looking at ways to continue to address that and how we might be able to design schemes that help to alleviate those issues. Technology is a big need. Technology, as you probably all know, continues to evolve so quickly that, you know, within a few years, equipment starts to become outdated. So identifying where new technology can help support the teaching and learning that's happening within classroom spaces. Interior finishes, so a lot of flooring instances, and then communication, the PA system. Really the recommendation would be to get all of the PA systems on the same network so that from a district-wide perspective, communication across the entire district is easy. You know, from the touch on your smartphone, you can communicate if there happens to be an emergency event, and even just getting communication within the individual buildings to spaces just to create better communication and up the amount of safety for students and staff. The energy savings in the building utilities opportunities that we're suggesting are really looking at those upgrades to lighting, putting in additional controls that allow for better controllability and monitoring of the systems to really hone in on optimum energy utilization. And ultimately, those are all recommendations that help to put money back into the operational budget for the school to support other things. So rather than having poorly performing mechanical systems that are old and outdated, by replacing those with new allows for those dollars really to, I think, essentially end up back in the classroom where they should be. If we go to the next couple of slides, I'm not going to really belabor those too much, but at Dawson, a lot of the similar types of themes, you'll see images of just cabinetry, casework, as we call it, are just old and outdated. You know, they're original to the building. Many of these buildings were built in the 50s and 60s. And so a lot of those items have just, they've reached their useful life. Pine trails, a lot of exterior envelope images that you're seeing here, just hollow metal frames that over time, the Michigan winters and the salt and the battles that we have, those materials just start to lose out. Jump to the next one. So northward, knowing that, you know, now that is the early childhood center, again, a lot of the same types of recommendations. There have been a number of interiors updates that the early childhood program has put in place. So some of the interior finish items that you see with the other elementary buildings aren't necessarily present here, but a lot of the other themes really are consistent with the other elementary buildings.
Could I pop in here just for a second?
So if we go to the next slide, Jacob mentioned sorry.
Oh, no problem. Just had a couple questions that popped up in the chat. We had a recommendation that the elementary is definitely in need of lines in the parking lot and fencing in the play areas.
So I believe, just to respond to those two comments specifically, the asphalt pavement upgrades and we did have fencing for safety have been identified in the assessment. So appreciate those comments. I think we have captured those. So when the report comes out, hopefully you'll see that those have been then put on the list.
Thank you.
Sean, we might take a go one step further with that too, that also identified, a need for addressing traffic flow for parent pickup and drop off and bus loops. So just building on that comment about needing lines in the parking lots, it goes beyond that as well to, fully address that site safety and security issue for maybe a little bit of reconfiguration and such for safety purposes.
Exactly. Rob, are there any other questions that popped up that we should pause to answer at this time?
Not at this time. A couple that I think we'll be able to ask about at the end.
Okay, great. So Jacob mentioned the elementary visioning opportunities that we've had so far. We did have a smaller group of administrators and staff from the elementary buildings. And again, the idea behind that conversation was, we certainly have all of these recommendations from the assessment that we want to look at, but let's take a step back and really start to stretch the vision. What does elementary education look like in the future for Allegan Public Schools? And it was a lot of fun, I think, and really exciting to start to talk about these opportunities. And as you heard James lead in with our conversation today, as a district, you have some really great opportunities to start to look into the future for the elementaries. And so a lot of the themes that we heard were safety and security, obviously being at the top of the list. And that would include not only just within the facilities, but also getting to that drop off and pick up and really making sure that, as soon as you enter the site, the environment is set up to really provide the highest degree of safety that we can for students and visitors coming to the site. Community friendly was highlighted. The staff really wants to continue to support ideas and ways in which the community can really engage with the buildings and the great programs that are happening at the buildings. Supporting new technology and curriculum. Again, thinking into the future, how will education be delivered? How can the architecture and the design of the space help support those future initiatives? Part of that is really focusing on flexibility and adaptability. 20 years down the road, we're not sure how education will be delivered. So how can we continue to design spaces that are agile enough to make those shifts as they come about? Inclusive, really designing the building so that everybody is welcome. Really trying to make sure that nobody's left out and really create just an environment that people are comfortable in and excited to come to. Natural light, really creating an educational environment that's uplifting and inspiring. As anybody would attest to, being able to see daylight on it, from your workspace or from your teaching space, your classroom space, it really does have a significant impact on mood. So those were some of the themes that we heard, and all really great information that I think got our group excited to really start to think about the next steps. And then we dove into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of what are the specific spaces that right now, maybe at the elementary buildings, there just isn't space to provide for some of these opportunities. Classroom furnishings and furnishings throughout is a trend and a pretty common across many districts that we're working with, that the days of sitting in a classroom and facing forward and staring at the board all day are a thing of the past. The ability for classrooms to be reconfigured and the ability for students to be comfortable and move and adjust throughout the course of the day, it's a very important concept that is really working its way into the educational environment. Many of the elementaries, the gym and the cafeteria are one and the same. So from a programming standpoint, it creates scheduling challenges. And how can we create some environments that are separate, possibly combine the two next to one another? So you see, like, the image in the upper right corner shows a gym and cafeteria adjacent to one another, where a partition could be installed, and it allows for separation as well as combination of that space for larger events, say, music programs and those types of things. The support networks and the supports that are given to students in today's educational environment are much different than when the buildings were originally designed. So there's a number of itinerant staff and academic support staff that are in the buildings, supporting the work of the teachers and staff, and really working in many different areas to boost the academic performance of students. So that requires space. It requires office space. It requires small group meeting space. It requires large group instruction space. So really trying to amp up the types of those spaces within the building. And then just to kind of close on the last two bullet items, the STEM and STEAM. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. And then if you hear STEAM, that acronym is the same as STEM, but adding art into the mix. So as we understand future career paths for students, even at the elementary levels, how do we start to create opportunities for them to be exposed to those types of careers and really set the stage for educational curriculum as they move through the rest of their K-12 academic career. The final item is the kitchen was a pretty common theme that we heard about. Really trying to get a kitchen environment, serving environment that allows for greater prep on site versus it needing to be prepped at the central kitchen. It brings a different level of quality, much fresher level of quality to students and staff in the building, and has a significant impact on academic performance. So again, I think all of those, as we went through them, we're really excited about these themes that we've heard and are real curious to hear what you all have to say tonight.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean and Jacob. I hope it highlights to the community and the people in this call the planning and work that's gone in to trying to prepare for today. And it sets an example of how things will be moving forward. And as you can see, we've already gotten input from various groups. There's some groups we have not gotten input from yet. We have not yet met with the middle school stakeholder group. We have not yet met with the high school stakeholder group, and those things are coming. And so there's more work to be done and more groups to hear. And so this is just such an exciting time. But we wanted to set the stage a little bit with this preface about how we got to today, so that now we can turn it over to you all a little bit and start to hear from you and to ask some questions to guide our thinking. In the past, Allegan Public Schools, I think, has done a great job of bringing bond proposals to the community that have been purposefully built to meet a specific need. For example, the auditorium was an enormous need, the pool, the field house, the technology changes that we had in 2012, the conference center. This time it is a little different. It's a unique opportunity to, instead of coming to you with an exact idea, an exact vision, we actually want to have you help build it. And I do want you to think a little bit bigger than, just fixing up existing spaces. What might elementary education look like in the future if we had to sort of, if we built it from the beginning, how would we build it? What would it look like? And it might get you thinking a little bit bigger and more broadly. But the most important question that I think to start us out is what are your priorities? We want to hear maybe some voices here as community members and staff members. What are your priorities for our district? And I would welcome some voices, but I would also welcome, based on someone's comfort level, to put something in the chat, to feel free to use either of those venues to talk to us. So is there someone who would maybe have the courage to want to speak to the virtual room and maybe outline some priorities that have been on your mind for our district?
Well, James, I have just a couple of general comments here. It's nice to see the enthusiasm for these changes in her district. Annette says that everything she hears is so encouraging and just said that our district is amazing. And then Kim also says that she loves hearing these ideas and it just makes her very excited for the future. We did have a question about, or a suggestion that the heating and cooling system needs some attention at the high school.
Yep. Yes, it does. And I think that did also come through on the facilities assessment, if I recall. That is a known issue. But again, to hear from people that are living it is why we are here today. Living it day in and day out, where I know things can be either too cold or too hot, but it's tough to get that just right in each part of the buildings. So I'm glad that was put in there. That is something that it goes with the comfort. So warm, safe, secure, comfortable environments is exactly the type of feedback that we would want to hear from the community today and moving forward. So anyone else that might feel like they want to vocalize some priorities? It may be that we've hit on most of them, but what else might people be thinking?
Comment came through on the YouTube chat that definitely we need to pay attention to the tennis courts.
Yeah, those are important for many reasons. Definitely tennis in our community has been a strength. So many kids throughout the years have built friendships and community on those tennis courts. And obviously there's been quite a bit of success. And it's an exciting place to be in the summer. It is a hopping place and it's really a hub of our community and it needs some attention. It really does. It's also used for physical education courses. And that's just a very well-used part of our grounds. So I'm glad to hear that it's not just us that noticed that it's time to do some work there.
Holly posted in the YouTube chat that she would love to see an entryway in the high school similar to the elementary schools for safety.
That is such an excellent point. Those that have been in the high school know that, once you get in, you're not sort of funneled through the office to greet a person who can, help you. The access to the building once you're in is, I think, more than we would hope for in this day and age. And so that was noticed on the facilities assessment as well, that designing a way to make that entry to the high school more safe is a priority. So these are great. This is exactly what we're looking for tonight. Keep them coming.
And James, I would add that also is a common theme at West Ward and Dawson. I know Pine Trails is set up already with that type of vestibule, but to reiterate, we have captured those. So great points.
Yep, good points. That is an issue, not just in the high school, but in some other buildings in the district as well. Yeah, excellent points. What else? You have something else, Rob?
Yeah, Nancy had several concerns with the middle school. Basically, one of the biggest ones would be with the parent drop off and pickup. So of course, they're not using the staff lot. I know we have a staff member helping with that right now.
Yes.
And then in addition to that, the sound system needs updating. The PA system for emergencies and things like that. Also cameras.
Yeah, I do want to discuss about the pickup and drop off. Talk about a theme that has emerged over the years, not just at the middle school as this was relating to, but in every building, I think in our district has a setup that funnels to really one road, making it difficult to provide a safe environment for pickup and drop off for our kids and for our staff sometimes to park and then walk into the building as well at a busy time in the morning, particularly. So this was a theme that's come up on all of our surveys that we've done over the years for our school improvement plans. So pickup and drop off in our elementaries, middle school in particular is something that is known. It is something that I think needs to be made safe and needs to be a priority of this proposal. So that's a great point. The high school does a little bit better. There's a lot more ways in and out for safe pickup and drop off, but the other buildings do struggle with this.
Had a comment as the stakeholder groups are determined, just making sure that the stakeholders include people that will actually be using the facilities as well.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I think that when we speak to the buildings individually, it would be, staff members and people that live and breathe that building on a day-to-day basis that we want to hear from. And people that are maybe particularly interested in a certain segment, whether it be like the auditorium, for example. We have some staff members that have expertise in that area that we've already accessed to help us determine the needs in that facility. And I think we'll need more of that as time goes by, because having an assessment is one thing, but living it on a day-to-day basis just provides a level of experience that we could not get another way other than speaking with those people. So we would welcome anyone who would feel they'd want to be a part of that when we start to set those meetings. We would love that to be a large group.
I'd love to hear your comments on a couple that have popped up here about learning environments. The first comment from Lindsay was just how we can brighten up the interiors of our buildings because we have so much of that dark brick in the buildings. And then also another comment about somehow creating outdoor learning spaces.
Yeah, I mean, wow, outdoor spaces right now has become a very important theme. And let's all hope we never in our lifetimes experience a pandemic again. But the ability for us to take kids outside, both for safety, for fresh air, for a learning experience, is a great point. I think it's something that's been catching on throughout the nation to provide that. I think there's something to be said about, I was an ex-science teacher here, and walking in the woods and learning things and experiencing them outside of a textbook or a screen. I love that. That's a great idea. When it comes to brightening up our spaces, I think we're going to be faced with an important question at some point. And it might be, are we going to be able to renovate our way to meeting all of our needs or not? Or do we need to think, more creatively about what again, elementary education looks like moving forward? I think these are great ideas. This is exactly what we're looking for tonight.
A couple other things that came up in the YouTube chat talking about spaces for support staff. Many elementary support staff positions have been eliminated. Are there, and just wondering about if there will be the opportunity to bring back some support staff.
Yeah, I think there might be. Budgetary picture is looking a little better as of even today, actually. So that's really good news. And hopefully we can put some pieces back together. But the point to be made about itinerant staff, as we discussed earlier, is huge. We have social workers, speech pathologists, school psychologists, instructional assistants and parapros that come visit our buildings. We have services that visit our buildings from outside. Kids Hope. We have sometimes mental health come into our buildings, and we struggle in almost every building in the district to provide appropriate spaces for these meetings to occur. I love hearing that that's been noticed by others. It is great that we all work well together and share our spaces, but it is just not always easy to do so in our current environment.
Speaking of thinking big, I like this one. Jennifer says that because we've had such a issue with the roofs because they're all flat, is there a possibility that they could somehow be vaulted to take care of those problems?
Well, I've seen buildings like this and those big spaces that often incorporate natural light, and they're beautiful. They're fun to be in and learn in. And the actual physical structure of a space does impact learning. It does. It impacts how one feels in that space. And this is a great idea. I love hearing about how we can, make that environment feel for kids just safe, warm, comfortable. And these are, think big. This is when we can think big, and, we can pare down as we go through the process. But it's great to start, with a big vision and, then see where that leads us.
Speaking of brightening up some spaces, Jill suggests having some murals painted in the middle school and high school hallways. Let's see here. And then we also have Stephanie bringing up the idea of a brand new building instead of just renovations.
Exactly. I mean, that's the type of thing I think we need to think about. If you think about the size of our district, how we're built, what that brings up is also something that came up during our reconfiguration discussions from last year is, do we need to think about and talk about grade centers in an elementary setting? Grade centers to be successful would be, having elementary kids grouped by, lower L and upper L, maybe. Maybe there's a K2 and a 3-5. And, maybe those spaces, are new. I think that's something that if we don't open the door to that conversation, the people in this forum and that would watch this video later might not understand that these types of things can be on the table and they are worth discussing. And obviously there's pros and cons to those things. And I think those can be vetted out. But to throw the question, on the table is, can we even talk about new buildings? The answer is yes, we can talk about those. If that meets our instructional needs for kids, if grade centers is the way to go and our buildings as they stand now cannot accommodate that, we can think about thinking bigger. So I'm glad that someone threw that out there. I think that's worth discussing.
Speaking of getting bigger, Hillary suggests music practice rooms in the high school and middle school.
Yeah, that Allegan community has always been supportive of the arts. It is something that's been very powerful here for years. We've had excellent bands and choirs, and our visual arts have been extremely strong. And those spaces cannot be forgotten. If you think about student, brains and learning and the impact that music can have on those, the impact, all of the careers that have design and graphic arts, this is great. This is exactly it. We need to start thinking about how are we preparing our kids for the future and what types of spaces are required to do so. Great ideas. I love them.
Air conditioning in the elementary buildings. You want to talk about that one?
Well, I think we've made some headway there. And maybe Amy can remind us of back in the 2012 bond, there was some movement in that direction, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. All of our classroom spaces are air conditioned. There are some of the common spaces, the gyms, that are not. So
that needs been met in part, but what I might read into that is maybe those needs need to be met in full. So common spaces. I know, for example, since I play basketball there frequently, the middle school gym is really unbearable in the summer. And if we want to utilize our spaces for kids year round, we need to make sure that we can make them comfortable and usable from an environmental standpoint as well.
A couple of really cool ideas in the YouTube chat here. A more high-tech entry system for visitors that maybe we could have a way to print badges for them. Obviously, we're talking about school safety.
Yeah, that is a very safe approach. Someone can come in, they can be funneled through the office. Before getting into the building, they would be viewed on a camera. They could speak to someone. Some of our buildings have this capability already to speak to someone in the office without having to enter. Have that flow work in a safe and secure way. Have them check in, print a badge. These are the ways efficient buildings that have frequent visitors should run. And I would agree fully with that comment.
And another one, since we have so much new technology in our buildings, just having a place where students can plug in. So, outlets in the floor or outlets built into furniture.
Oh, that's great. That's a great thought. I actually hadn't thought about that too much, that if you walk around our spaces, the ability to charge up, it isn't there. I don't know who said that, but that's a very good observation. I would also say that even spaces for, right now we've been struggling with Wi-Fi in the community. So might we even consider community spaces? I think the library and maybe, McDonald's provide Wi-Fi, but if we want family engagement, might we think about how we can offer some access, to the community? I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know, but it's an interesting thought to, be a place where we truly are a hub of the community and meeting the needs of our people.
This is the educational moment where we see if people have other questions.
Yeah, a little wait time. Let's see how we're doing. We've done great so far. This is fun. And we've really touched on a number of our questions without having to ask them, which is also wonderful. So I think we might be, if nothing's popping up in the chat, unless someone from our admin group here maybe says it isn't time, I think we might have gotten to question 4. Do we feel that we've gotten there?
A user in the YouTube chat suggesting, I think, for student safety, like a more high-tech way to, specifically this one mentions monitoring vaping, but I would think that could include a lot of, student behavior and things like that.
Yeah, well, it is true that there are vape detectors that some schools have installed in their bathrooms that are, they are part of the infrastructure. And I think that might be what the comment is referring to. That is a real thing that exists. They are quite expensive at this time to do well. And, we want to be proactive in our approach with educating kids about why vaping is not a good idea. But sometimes you do have to be a bit reactive and make sure that the kids understand that they're going to be monitored. And those types of detectors, I've heard from other administrators in other districts, have been successful from time to time. And that is something that we've already looked into and will continue to do so.
And Jason was wondering if there are other schools with similar demographics that we have that could be referenced to show residents the importance that these positive changes could make.
Wonderful idea. I actually would defer a little bit to our teams here from Tower and Chrisman. They've done bond work, they've done renovation, they've done new construction, and they do have, I'm sure, some districts in mind. Maybe they could speak to that for a second, but before we would go too far down the road, I anticipate we would visit some similar districts that have undergone a process like this and experience them ourselves. But any other comments from Sean or Jacob about other districts that might be similar to ours?
Yeah, I think we've had an opportunity to work with Kalamazoo Public Schools. I know they're a little bit larger district, but we've had the opportunity to actually build 3 new elementary schools for them. It's really great to see the transformation that makes over some of the older buildings. I would say a district that's more consistent with you right now that I know Tower Pinkster currently is working with is Coldwater Community Schools. And they, about 10 years ago, they actually moved to more of a grade-centered approach, and we're doing a new 4th and 5th grade building that's replacing one of their old outdated 1950s buildings there. So I think that actually will be slated to open here just after the first of the year. So that's a very recent example of one of the districts that we've worked with. And Jacob, I'll see if you've got anything to chime in from the Chrisman perspective.
Sure, thanks, Sean. Ludington Schools is one that comes to mind for me that's, similar size and demographics, that is in the early stages of construction. And, that's very similar to one of the ideas that was floated out, about new elementary schools and in the grade school configuration idea. That's essentially what we have underfoot right now, where we're started on construction in Ludington. So that would be a great example. And I think that, James's suggestion is wonderful. And that I was going to suggest the same thing had James not said that, is with the number of districts that Tower Pinkster and Chrisman have collectively and independently worked in, there's lots of examples we can draw from and provide opportunity to be able to visit those.
Great. Thank you both for that. That's great feedback.
A couple other ideas that came up in the chat. Updating or expanding the spectator section for the swimming pool. And also the just talking about the entryway in the high school, where the office is located, how questioning the safety of that and if that can be addressed.
Yep, and I think that does come to that secure vestibule, that secure entry that we discussed, and the location of that and how that would be reconfigured would have to be looked at, but I think that's important. I've been in the pool area during some big meets, and it is very tight when you get a number of schools coming for an invitational, and I can see why that was put into the comments as well. That is a very crowded facility when we're running a big meet for sure.
Rob, I saw one comment that maybe we would be good to touch on as well, and that was from Jason in the Zoom chat. It was more about the marketing campaigns and promoting a potential bond. I think Kalina and Chloe from Chrisman and Tower Pinkster are both on the call as well, and they're both experts at really communicating and helping to educate the community about the potential bond. I think a lot of that work will start to happen a little bit later on. Right now, the phase that we're in is really just trying to craft a plan that's right for the community. So I think our first goal is that after we get to that point, then those two specifically have a number of tools at our disposal, productions of videos, flyers, leaflets, additional forums. There are a number of things that we can do to really start to get the word out about a potential plan once it's crafted. So hopefully that helps answer some of that question. I think there's definitely more to come on that one.
And also another great idea that came up in the YouTube chat is taking a look at some regional manufacturers and businesses to see what they're doing to address security and employee comfort and movement of people within buildings and things like that. And how that could translate to an educational setting.
Yeah, great idea. Yeah, I think that those community partnerships are important to us. And if we can learn about maybe how some of those businesses function that might help our kids, I love that idea. So we may be to question 4. And again, this is a comfort level from, who's in the room. We'd like to hear maybe if you would support a millage extension at this time, and also maybe what other information you would think it would be helpful to help you understand the process. I guess you could respond in the chat if somebody wanted to speak out loud, if they'd be willing to support that. And if not, let's throw it in the chat and see if we get some responses of where we feel we're at.
If you're on Zoom, you could also use that reactions button and give a thumbs up or an applause if you're interested.
Nice. One of the things we were aware that you might need some more information about, and we're going to do that next after we give a little time for this question, is to talk about school funding in general. I think that it's going to be very important to educate our community about how schools are funded and how they're not funded, and what certain things can go for and what they can't. And we will talk about that a little bit tonight to start that educational process. So that one we're aware of about educating about school funding. I think that's an important piece.
Well, we got a YouTube chat that says yes and support,
Great.
and a couple over there, and we have some support in the Zoom chat as well.
Well, that's great news. It will take a village. It will take all of us to educate, to get the word out, to craft something that we feel the community can get behind and support, and to really just keep our kids in our minds and first in all decisions that we make at all times. And I think we'll be able to come up with something that, with the feedback from the community, that will be something the community will support. So that's exciting. I'm very glad to hear that. And maybe it is a good time, and we can chime in if the more information comes in the chat. But let's turn it over to Amy to just give a little bit of an overview on school funding for those that are in this room, and know that we'll continue to educate on this point moving forward as well. So turn it over to you, Amy.
Thank you. So although I get real excited about talking about school finance, not everyone does. So just bear with me. So just a real quick school finance 101. Michigan schools are funded under a structure referred to as Proposal A. The Michigan voters approved that back in 1994. Under this plan, Michigan schools are funded with a total of 24 mills. You may recall seeing on your tax bills. That is made up of a statewide millage rate of 6 mills on all property and 18 mills on non-homestead property when that is approved by the local voters. This in Allegan would have been the 18 mill non-homestead renewal property tax we asked the voters to approve in August, and were successful. Under Proposal A, the state pays the majority of the costs through our per pupil foundation allowance. But to receive the full funding, schools have to levy locally on the non-homestead property in their district. Districts do this non-homestead election differently. Allegan Public, we go to the voters every 2 years and ask for a 2-year extension. So when we're looking at operating millage, that is what helps support our general fund expenses, which basically pay the day-to-day operational bills in our district. The second bullet there, the sinking fund approval, the district was fortunate enough to receive voter approval for a sinking fund 3 years ago. It was a 5-year proposal. So we are in the 3rd year of a 5-year. This 1 mill, which is now rolled back slightly with the Headley calculation, generates approximately $500,000 a year. The funds generated from this millage have very strict guidelines as to what is allowable. Fortunately, the things we are able to spend it on, student instructional technology, student safety, some of our bigger facility maintenance projects, that $500,000 helps take a lot of burden off the general fund to keep dollars in classrooms. The third bullet would be a voter approved bond. Allegan currently levies 7.55 mils annually for our debt. The funds that are generated from the 7.55 mils go directly to pay principal and interest payments on our current outstanding bond issues. So that's kind of in a nutshell the different pots of money, and there are other pots of money that help support education and learning, title funds, at-risk funds, but a majority of our funding comes from the state per pupil foundation. So if we want to go maybe to the next slide, I think James is going to kind of talk a little bit this slide.
Yep, I'd be happy to. This slide indicates the comparisons of millage rates in our area. You can see that we levy 7.55 mils, and as Amy indicated, that goes to pay debt from previous projects. And that's the number that we would not exceed with this proposal. So that is what we would stay at and still be able to raise the funds we discussed earlier, which is why this is so exciting. If you compare us to other districts around, you can see that we're in a very fair place related to others. But as I indicated earlier, we've had a number of districts around us pass bond issues very recently. Both Otsego and Plainwell did last year. Hopkins is not far removed. Fenville is, I think, still under construction from a previous bond. And so I think I need people to understand that we live in now an educationally competitive environment. Whether you think that's appropriate or not, it is just the truth, which means that we can have kids leave us to go to Hopkins and Otsego and Plainwell if they so choose. So we need to maintain our facilities. We need to improve our facilities. We need to make sure that we're staying competitive with our neighbors so that this is the school of choice for our kids. And you know what? Maybe some kids from adjacent districts would see what we're doing and come here. I think we've already started that mindset by providing early childhood center with childcare. I think that's going to draw people to our community. And if we take this next step in our vision that we're discussing today, it can be very exciting about what we can promise our community for the future. So we just wanted to demonstrate with this slide that what's happening with us from a millage standpoint is very comparable and fair in comparison to our neighbors. And I'll turn it back over to Amy a little bit for this slide, and I'll help out in a little bit as well.
Okay, so this is kind of just some bullet points of back to the why now. How did we get here? We currently have, I call them 4 bond series issues. One of my responsibilities in my position as a finance director is to monitor those bond issues and make sure if it's an appropriate time to do refunding, and just to kind of put refunding in most people's mindset. It would be similar to refinancing your home mortgage. So, you know, your mortgage is 4%, and right now rates are great, and you can refinance it 2%, and there's a significant savings there. So we've done that a number of times. I think I've done 4 refundings in the last 11 years. The most recent was this week. With the given current interest rates, the timing of our bond, we're in the process of refunding our 2012 bond. This was super exciting. Just an example, the savings to the taxpayers, the market was very nice to us yesterday. We actually sold the bonds yesterday with a savings to the taxpayers of well over $3 million. So in the end, what this does is it gets our bonds paid off quicker, less cost to the taxpayers, and has basically put us in a position where we can go to the voters and ask for a no mill increase, keeping that at a 7.55 mil, but yet generating enough funds to pay existing debt and new bonding projects. So
yeah, I couldn't have said that better, and really don't have anything to add on that slide. That was well done. Thank you, Amy.
Amy, a question that came up in the chat that maybe you could speak to was asked about this person is approached often about what does Allegan Public Schools do with revenue generated from the Michigan lottery? I'm wondering if you could speak to that and how much that actually is, or.
A few years back, I probably could have told you the exact percentage that goes to support the school aid fund at a statewide level. I haven't looked at that recently. There is a portion of the lottery proceeds that do support school aid fund. It is pretty small, and I could certainly check into that and find out what that percentage is now.
Is it fair to say, Amy, that even though that's small, it ends up in the end being a part of the per pupil foundation allowance that we receive? Is that how that gets to us? Do we get anything, direct from them in that manner?
We do not get anything directly from the state from any kind of lottery proceeds that comes directly to Allegan Public.
Right. So it just basically
Everything.
helps to bolster the school aid fund and our per pupil funding that we get in a normal count day type situation.
Correct.
Anything else come up in terms of the chat or questions, Rob, that you're identifying?
No, just a great comment about from Annette about how maybe our area businesses can get on board and help support this in whatever unique ways they can.
I'm glad to hear that because I know that that's coming from a local business owner. So thank you, Annette, for saying that. And it's going to take all of us. It's going to take, the businesses, it's going to take the families. And I think people need to understand that even if they do not have children in our district, having excellent educational facilities raises the value of our community and our homes for everybody. And so that benefit isn't just for our kids, it's actually bigger. So the more we can get the word out that, this is really for Allegan as a whole, the better I think we can have for success. So I appreciate you saying that. Okay, well, it looks like we've gotten to one of our final slide that just indicates sort of like what's next. And you can see before you that right after this, like tomorrow, we're going to push out a survey to the district. It's going to talk about some of the things we discussed tonight. It's going to ask about their needs and hopes for the district, some things they might have on their mind so that we can continue to get data. We're then going to come back and have another community forum like this, where we took the data from this conversation and the survey to try to narrow our focus a little bit in terms of what we're trying to craft. We'll then survey again and have a third community forum on November 11th. And so what we're trying to do is prepare for the, a board workshop in November for the board to be able to sort of act on the scope of the program. And so we'll be doing a lot of work between now and November to attempt to craft the bond, the proposal that we're going to bring before you. So those are the milestones coming up. Spread the word that we would like a lot of community input. And if that means the survey, great. If it means that people can participate actually in the forum, that would be even better. So spread the word. We'll be sure and publish these dates out as well. And I'm so thankful for those of you that were able to make it tonight. I do want to say that there could be some people in the room that might have a question or two related to returning to school or COVID, and that I would be personally happy to stay on the call longer. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions related to that. So, I guess right now we can thank our guests for being here. Those of you that maybe do not have questions related to returning to school or COVID, certainly feel free to sign off. I want to thank you for being here. But like I said, I will stay as long as people have questions about returning to school. I can tell you more about that. Let's give some wait time right now.
So James just had a question pop up asking, are we on track to go back full face-to-face?
That's the question. That's a great one, and what I think we need to talk about here today. At this point, we've just today released a video to the staff, and we also have been receiving some new guidance from the health department and some other information that we just didn't know back when we made an October 1st hopeful target date. And so back then we were wondering if we might get a phase change, and that hasn't happened. We were wondering, how our kids might do with the safety protocols, and our kids have been just great. They're following all the rules. They've been wearing masks when required to do so, trying to social distance, although that can be challenging for kids at times. They've been doing really well. We also were wondering at the time that we published our original plan if we would be able to acquire PPE and cleaning supplies as they were flying off the shelves and all the vendors were struggling to get them. And we've been able to get everything that we've needed. We're also, of course, tracking student or staff illness. And the great news is that as of today, we have not had any positive cases for staff or students. We have had a couple of quarantine situations, one from a staff member, one from a student, that were not related to school, which was they're doing fine, but it wasn't a school exposure that caused that to occur. So those are things that are good news. But then we also had some guidance put out by the health department that we did not know back when the board approved the original plan. And they have now provided us that guidance that I'll share with you a little bit here. And then we will release a video to this effect here tonight so the whole community can know what's the plan. So the health department has told us to look at 2 data points. One of them is the cases per day per million, and the other is the percent positivity for COVID. And they wanted us to look at that for our region and then for our county, and then look at the building level information. So what I want to express from our county is that we are at medium high risk for cases per million. And sometimes we've approached even high risk, which would be 40 per day per million gets you to a high risk. We are about 32 right now. We are at low risk for percent positivity with 1.7%, which is really good news for us. And again, as I said before, we have not had cases for kids or staff. So, but what the health department has indicated is if you're at medium high risk, which we are, since we have to go with the higher of the 2 data points, and we have no cases in the building, we do have the ability to have in-person instruction. But the caveat is only if we can follow all of the recommendations and requirements in the Safe Start plan. And they call those strict mitigation measures. And so we've had to analyze whether or not we could double the amount of kids on buses and double the amount of kids in the buildings and think about lunches and passing time, and whether or not we would be able to follow those strict mitigation measures with the COVID data profile as it stands right now. And so even though we are doing very well in many data profile cases, we would not have the ability to social distance appropriately in our buildings right now. And because we can't follow that strict mitigation measure, we are planning on staying in a hybrid environment at least through first trimester. And I know that's what some people were interested to hear today. So there's going to be a video that outlines how we came to that conclusion. But since you were here, I was hoping to share that with you tonight, since it's been on everyone's mind. Certainly would be willing to take questions now, talk about it further, or separately if someone would like to meet with me or have a phone conversation at some point later. So that is the decision. It will be reconfirmed and discussed monthly at every board meeting, which is now the law of the land. So please, if you don't have questions tonight, that's okay. You can come to any board meeting virtually and make public comment related to returning to school. And I guess at this point, I'd wonder if anybody in the room, virtual room, has questions related to the a lot of information I just gave you. Seeing anything in the chat, Rob?
Nothing popping up yet.
Okay. I think most of the people in the room probably had awareness, lots of staff members, and I appreciate them being here. I really do. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any questions. Again, I'm available at any time. Anybody else with other general statements or comments for the good of the order before we sign off tonight?
Hey, James, I do have a question for you.
Oh, hi, Lindsay. How are you?
Hi, good. tried to talk and I couldn't get my thing to unmute.
I hear you. I hear you well.
All right, good. So I am concerned about the kids not going back to school. My son is a first grader and this is not going well for him. Dad and I both work full time and he goes to the Little Tigers 2 days a week. He's at Westward 2 days a week and I keep him home with me 1 day a week. And he's not learning. He's not, I mean, he's given some paperwork to do. This week, the paperwork has been lost. The teacher is grading the paperwork. So now I have to find the paperwork or have him do it again. And it's a constant battle. It's an emotional struggle for the kids. They need to be with their friends. They need to be with their peers so that they can, learn the stuff. I know that the Early Learning Center, they are trying. They're not teachers. They're not, and they have kids that in their school age room that are, kindergarten and first graders all the way up through 5th grade. You have one teacher in all these different ages and they're given paperwork and the kids are expected to teach themselves. And I want to say, I think it's unacceptable, but that's not, I don't want to be that harsh. It's hard and the kids aren't learning and they're struggling. And I had a 6-year-old in tears on the couch today because, he doesn't want to do it. And I don't have the support and the communication of, his peers and the teacher and stuff like that. And I just think it's all very hard. And I would really love to see everybody go back full time for mental health reasons.
Yeah, I so appreciate your comments. And I was feeling your pain as you were saying it because I'm the father of 2 kids as well in the district that are older, but the struggle is absolutely real. My wife's the social worker at the high school and works full-time, more than full-time. I'm putting in a lot of time to try to do what we can to help the district as well. And both of my kids are home and often struggle with their content. What they have found to be successful is, again, a first grader would have a harder time with this, but the teachers that we've communicated with have been incredibly responsive. The principals have been incredibly responsive. We've had some significant technology issues in our district that affected everyone, which caused a lot of frustration for families, and those have been resolved and fixed now. And I hope that stays that way. It's been quite the battle. Personally, I don't feel very different than you. My kids are in sports. They're around other kids and they've been, safe. They've been taking measures to maintain safety with masks and making sure their hands are clean. But when I spoke with the health department, when we were about to make this decision, we have some tough data surrounding us in our counties to the north and south. Some of that is college related, Grand Valley State and Kalamazoo College and Western. But those data points surrounding us have the health department very concerned of a fall surge. And to have kids come to school, not be able to social distance, and maybe they would do well, but maybe they'd bring it home to mom and dad and grandma and grandpa. They just did not support that the data yet was quite where it needed to be to double our population. I'm thankful we can have school 2 days a week. There was some doubt about that as we began school or over the summer. I'm thankful that we can have some activities with sports. Personally, I know my kids benefit from that from a mental health standpoint. So I just want to say that I hear you and feel that because we're living it as well. But right now we had to err on the side of safety with the guidance from the health department. And I hope we can soon. I hope that surge does not happen. And then we can, do this for, another 9 weeks or so, which will go by fast. And I would love to be able to see kids back. I have concerns with flu season and COVID hitting at the same time. I really do. But thank you. I guess I just want to thank you for being here and expressing yourself. I reach out to your principal as well if you can.
Right. Now, I do have one more question on the health department, like their numbers or whatever, because I've followed them on Facebook and I've been following their numbers. And they recently changed their positive cases to cases on their main dashboard. And I don't know what a case is a case. If it's a positive case, it's a case. They have the positive and the negative and whatever. And ultimately, I take the 2 seconds every day and do the math. And I guess I don't understand how we're coming to a medium to high risk if when you do the math of positive cases minus recovered people minus the 7 deaths, you have like 43 people out of 119,115, which is the last population that I have. That's
Right.
less than 0.002% or something like that.
I've done that same math. You're spot on. You are. And the best way that I can explain it, that they explain to me, is I'm not an epidemiologist, and maybe don't always understand, although I'm learning a lot about how this works, is the fear is exponential growth. And the swiftness in which a virus can go from ongoing transmission of 1 to 3 kids, and how quickly that can become a big problem for your district or community, is much faster than some people think because of that exponential growth possibility. And I've looked at some models, and the asymptomatic spread is a problem. So if you gather a lot of people, and you may not know that that's even happening in your building for 2 weeks. And by then the amount of exposures the volume's been so high that it becomes difficult to trace and control. And my fear is then we would be shut down and be in a fully remote environment very quickly. And so I'm kind of trying to hold on to some instruction so that we can at least maintain the hybrid. And I guess that's my best explanation of those data points, which I follow frequently as well. Regarding the positives, I think the language changed on there because they're including what they call presumptive positives, which maybe are not laboratory confirmed yet. So they might have changed the language for that reason. But this is a conversation that we're having that I've had with others and the health department. So the way you're thinking about it is accurate. When I looked at the data points, and I kind of thought, I think we're good to go. I think our data supports that we've been doing well. But after my talk with them and how close we would be to going to a different type of instructional model, it just wasn't time quite yet with the data that's surrounding us as well. So I did consult them. This wasn't a decision made in a vacuum. The health department contributed, and together that was where we landed for now for safety. And there's a number of parents who are on a different page and don't think we should be in school at all, and definitely don't think we should have more kids around one another. And so we're trying to balance that all out. It's tough. But again, thank you.
And I do have one last thing. Sorry, Rob.
Oh, no problem.
Have we done any comparison or anything like that with some of the schools in Michigan that are full-time face-to-face? I know it's on the other side of the state, which is actually where I moved from a couple of years ago. Livingston County, Howell Public Schools, they're full-time face-to-face, everybody's there.
And Lindsay, that actually ties into the question I was going to bring up. A question in the chat was, are there neighboring schools that are full-time?
There are some. Fenville and Martin, I think, were full, and they've been doing very well. There have been other schools that have had to shut down. We've had schools, and I wish I could snag the name right now, but that in the state that have had to go to a fully remote situation. The majority of schools around us are hybrid, and they are planning on staying hybrid until we reach phase 5. So, Otsego, Plainwell are looking to stay until phase 5. I think Wayland's considering a change from hybrid to fully face-to-face with input from their community, but I think they might land where we are, which is that they're not quite ready to do so. So the majority of schools are hybrid around us. The schools in Kent County that have gone fully face-to-face have all had COVID cases, the ones that I've researched. Not something that's been enough maybe to shut them down, other than Caledonia had to shut down for 2 weeks. But it's just such a close thing where it would not take much. It may be worded as, we may be doing so well with cases because we're hybrid and because we are able to space. And so it's hard to say that our success means that we're ready to go full face-to-face, when equally said, our success might be because we're not face-to-face. And that's why we're just trying to make it a database decision with the health department guidance. In my leadership classes, I never, ever thought I would have to learn about these things. And I'm doing the best I can. And again, if maybe we chat with the health department, if you still have questions, we can get Angelique Joins involved, and she'd be always willing to talk from a perspective of the health department about why that was her recommendation.
And then another question that popped up in the chat, and I don't know if this maybe is just addressed in your video, are the medium high ratings based on regions?
There's both actually, but the change, a very recent change that the health department indicated was school-based decisions were no longer going to be made by the region, which for us, I think would be good. They are going to be made at the county level. And then the next step would be to analyze your district's data. So if the region allows instruction based on the phase, which for us, they would in phase 4, if you can follow all of the measures, then you look at your county data, and then you look at your school data. And so our region allows for face-to-face. The key point that's difficult to make is that's only recommended if you can follow all of the measures. And so that was the next step. We said, okay, if we double our kids, can we social distance, essentially? And the answer right now is no. And that was sort of the hinge point of why we felt that the data needed to be a little bit better before we make that move. But that's an excellent question.
I don't see any additional questions coming through here. Should we tell people where the video will be available, James?
Sure. Yep.
Right.
We're going to post the video on alleganps.org/return, and it'll be on our website. And we're also going to try to send a link via School Messenger here tonight, so that maybe if that link works, it can be just clicked on and send you right to the video of me explaining some of the things we talked about tonight about how we came to the decisions we did.
Can we put a link on the Facebook page as well? The
Yes, I
Allegan
think,
Public Schools Facebook page.
Rob, we can throw a link to that video on our social media, right?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Lindsay. Those are very thoughtful questions. And I do feel your pain, although my kids are a little older, so my pain's probably not quite as severe as yours, and I get that. So thank you again for being here and for sharing your thoughts, and we will take them into consideration for sure. So
thank you.
Okay. Anything else that has come up in the chat or from anyone that may be still with us?
Looks like that's about it at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you again. These are challenging times, and for all of you to take time out of your evening to be here with us it really does mean a lot. And again, never be afraid to reach out to me. So I think we'll sign off. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you.